Now, I'm going to depend on our technical people to make sure the person, before I even mention his name, is online. Can he hear us? Tech guys, he's on? Is he going to be on the screen as well? Can you put him on then so I can introduce him? It's someone we know very well. Ah, yeah, there he is. Admassu, can you hear me? Yay. All right, so we have a fantastic guest. Where are you, Admassu, if I may ask?
I am a bit far away in Dallas, Texas, at the
Ooh.
U.S.-Africa Business Summit.
So it must be late, early morning, 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, right?
It's 4 a.m. and the coffee tastes good.
Better be Ethiopian coffee, Admassu. So listen, for those of you who don't know who Admassu is, I think he's a fellow Ethiopian, obviously a globetrotter. He runs one of the most successful banks in Africa. And how do I know that? I think it's 2 years in a row, we awarded him Banker of the Year, and his bank was awarded Bank of the Year at the Africa Bankers Award. And I noticed at Masu, now you've been nominated again because I'm a judge there, so hopefully I see you in Nairobi in a couple of weeks. So at Masu has, with all due respect to others, he's built a tiny little bank into a powerhouse African bank, right? And really, by a lot of measures, because I see the numbers that they submit. So we're proud that he's one of us, but he, on a global scale, he puts Ethiopia on the map. A lot of conferences I go, he's always there talking about great things about Ethiopia. And I have to say, he's come through the last few years also for Ethiopia. So we should really, really be proud to have him. So Admassu, I won't take up a lot of your time, but I don't know if you've seen the questions we wanted to ask you, but it's really stuff that you already know, okay? And you may not be able to see what the audience, but we have a full house, okay? So let me just ask you from a global perspective, okay? Since you run a big financial institution, it's Pan-African, what are some of the trends that you see in the banking sector, trends in the economy? Governor Mamo was here this morning. He gave us a little bit of a explanations about the Fed, the impact of interest rates the Fed has been raising on emerging markets, especially in Africa. And he talked about other things like the BRICS Plus and all that. But from your perspective, what are some of the trends that you see, things that we should keep in mind? As you know, Ethiopia is embarking a lot of reforms. So what are some of the messages that you have? And then I'll follow up with some other questions. Okay?
Enabling those dynamics to come in. We know we're way behind the Europeans and even the Asians, as well as the North Americans. There's a lot to be done there. And I think with a lot of shocks coming in left and right, you just never know when there will be a much more serious retreat into national spaces or regional spaces. And as Africans, we have to be very clear that when the chips are down, you can only rely on yourselves and your neighbors to keep momentum going. And I think there is greater understanding. There is much more clarity these days around the imperative. But as Africans, we tend to be very good in aspirational matters, but when it comes to execution, getting things done, I think that's where we have gaps. And we need to keep putting the spotlight on getting things done. I think there are some countries that have really captured the imaginations of the world in terms of being very efficient and effective and disciplined, and that's the case of Rwanda and Mauritius. These are two countries that are very well organized and really get things done. I have my headquarters in Mauritius and a regional operations hub, both in Nairobi and a smaller one in Addis. And one of the things I've seen in my Mauritius principal office and to some extent Nairobi as well is the extent of organization. And Rwanda, of course, has been the dark horse coming from behind to really get serious leadership behind this issue of being organized and disciplined to get execution going and to obviously address what Kiprono had highlighted, which is just making sure that you have your own house in order. It's a very difficult world we live in. There's so much competition. If we don't have our houses in order, you've lost even before you started the process of engagement. And there, I think I always say to various countries and stakeholders that the one thing you have under control is keeping your house under order. If you can at least address that, you give confidence to the rest of the world that you're serious. You're not just talking the stuff, but you actually give it the importance it deserves. So these are just some initial remarks. I think competitiveness is one issue that comes to mind. We all know that some countries like Ethiopia have quite a bit of ways to go in terms of consolidation in the banking space. We have a lot of private banks that have very nicely come out onto the scene, but we know that there's just too many of them that are small. There is need for some consolidation. There's talk about that in the media. The regulators are talking about that. I think it's something that we have to do clearly. And in case people think this is just about Ethiopia, it's not. It's regionally. Kenya has over 40 banks as well. So many of them are also very small. And there's talk about consolidation there too, because you do need some strong champions. You go to countries like South Africa and you see the great success they've had is in the financial sector, is they've had critical mass with just a number of banks. And so, I think that's some unfinished business in terms of our reforms and our evolution of our financial sectors in East Africa. And I think that'll be very welcome to see. There's much more to say, but I just thought I would share some thoughts at this stage and thank the organizers for having me and for the opportunity. I look forward to more interactions in person in the future. I do have another hat that I wear in Ethiopia as the chair of the Financial Sector Deepening Agency, FSD Ethiopia. And we're doing very exciting things around capital markets, around pension fund reform, and capacity building across the board. So there's so much happening, and I think this is a great moment for the economic development of Ethiopia and the strengthening of the private sector there. But I'll leave it at that, and thank you all very much. I don't know if there'll be Q&A, but I'll be online for some more time.
Admassu, can you still hear me?
I sure can.
Listen, I would have thought you were in the audience when we talked about banking consolidation in Ethiopia. So obviously, you and I are on the same page, and a number of people in this room, I think, tend to agree with you. I was actually going to ask you about it, but you've answered my question, which is, do we need consolidation? So fantastic that we're in alignment with that, especially since you said we're too small and you linked it to some of the risks. Correspondent banks don't want to deal with small banks, right? I mean, that's a reality. That's a practical thing. It's not an ideological thing we're promoting here. We see it in the U.S. The likes of Citi or JP, they don't want to be dealing with small banks, and I'm sure you see it in your day-to-day activity. But I think you gave us a lot of thoughts, comments to think about, and I think there's a very thoughtful audience here. I'm sure that will take it. But we definitely thank you for waking up or staying up late, and maybe you were partying the whole night that you just waited for this thing to happen. But either way, we definitely thank you for it. And also we thank you through FSD. You've helped ESX a lot, right? Through funding, capacity building. So I think some of our board members are here as well. We really thank you for it. So in summary, I think what you said, increasing competitiveness, streamlining regulations, working together. I mean, this is the theme of this whole conference here today and tomorrow. But we thank you once again. If you want to stay on and listen to the rest of the event, I think you're more than welcome. If you want to doze off and sleep and go to the next day's event at the US-Africa Summit, which unfortunately we missed this year, that'll be fine as well. But on behalf of everybody else, can we give him a round of applause, please? All right, thank you, Admassu. Take care now. Okay? All right. Okay, so that kind of brings us to the end of sort of the presentation portion of it, but we have so many talented people with lots of responsibilities who run big organizations in this audience. I think we can't just let you go to lunch without participating actively by asking questions, right? So what I'm going to do is, you've heard all the presentations. I don't know if Admassu is still here, but if he is, he will answer. But at least we have two people here who you can ask questions. Obviously, you can also comment on what the governor said this morning, and also what the CEO of NSE also mentioned this morning as well. So any questions, comments you have from the presentations, or any thoughts you have about this event, but we'll give maybe, where is the organizers? How many minutes do we have? Do we have a clock? 10 minutes. Okay, they tell us we have 10 minutes, so we want questions, brief ones, to the point, and then we'll proceed with it. Okay? All right. Do I have mics? Okay, here's one. Two. We got two.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Moderator. My name is Fikru Agaye. I have many hats, but I would like to say I'm the Vice President of the Association of Ethiopian, the Vice President of the Society of Insurance Professionals. I have one question for Mr. Zafu. By the way, I would like to congratulate Mr. Zafu for his very insightful presentation this morning. Mr. Zafu is like a brand ambassador to the Ethiopian insurance industry, and it's my privilege even to ask him my questions. Mr. Zafu, as a very well-known insurance professional, and as a person who passed through even more than 3 governments, do you think we are on the right track? Do you believe that the insurance industry in Ethiopia currently is on the right track? This is my question. Are we on the right track?
What a difficult question to ask. Are we on the right track? Let me say that given the environment and the trading environment that we have, I don't know what else we could have done. I think the insurance industry was not really truly understood and continues to be not fully understood. As I mentioned during my presentation, I mean, you could be talking about the insurance coverage that insurance companies have given to risks in this country. That may perhaps give the impression that we're not really, that small. But that is no measure anymore, because I know what happens with competition in the insurance sector in this country. It's price-based, which means that the price that one demands for the risk that one accepts has been driven down to such an extent that it does not. I mean, I know what happened because we had a study done by actuaries outside the country, because we don't even have one actuarial office in this country. I think we had just one actuary, qualified actuary, who was here for a while, but then moved to the African Development Bank, I believe. Why? Because it really, the insurance industry had not been understood by the powers that be. And consequently, I mean, we don't have any training institution in this country for insurance people up to now. I know there is There is a firm which has been established recently, jointly by some insurance companies and some individuals who had been in the bank, in the National Bank. And we have not been looking at the mirror, or we've not been looking at what insurance companies or what the insurance sector has been doing. I mean, right across the border in Kenya, the insurance sector in Kenya is so much bigger, is so much stronger. And when you look at the population of Ethiopia, I mean, which represents the potential, we are nowhere. So I'm not sure if opening up the insurance industry right now is going to help us. I don't think so. I did mention the findings of Ato Hermes Amelga, who just say, look, it's a disgrace. We don't have a competitive, innovative insurance market in Ethiopia, and only serves 1% of the population of over 120 million. I mean, look, with less than half the population in Kenya, be it from the point of view of insurance penetration, from the point of view of micro-insurance, I mean, we are nowhere to compare. We have a long way to go. So, with all these attributes, if we say we are on the right track, then we may not be sounding honest with ourselves. In my opinion, we have a lot to do in this country as an insurance industry.
Thank you. I hate to interrupt a great speaker, so I'm just, but we have, the mic is dancing by itself. I was told we only have 10 minutes and we've already gone 6, so if we can make the questions quick and the responses even quicker, that'll be helpful. I think there was a hand there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Yarai Fritzleshi. I'm the CEO of Saglen Wadi General Hospital. We run in the healthcare sector. My question is for Mr. Zafu again. We all know the insurance sector has a very low penetration even compared to Kenya, like you said. But specific to the health sector, what do you think the insurance industry can contribute to making sure that healthcare will stop being paid out of pocket? I want to see your view in regard to that. Thank you.
So what we'll do is we'll take a few more questions instead of one each. All right? Wow, we see a lot of hands. Okay, I'll start with the CEO of Dashan Bank. And then you, okay, right there. And then one more, and we need some ladies to ask questions as well, right? So way in the back, right? The one that's waving, okay? And then we wrap up. And then direct your question to the person you want the answer from.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to be fair to Kiprono as well, so I will direct my question to him. I have two questions. One is, as a country now, we are in the process of embarking upon the establishment of this stock market. So what are the top 3, things that you would really give us as a learning that we should take as a country? And the second question that I would like to ask is, because I am from the banking sector, how do banks really contribute to the upcoming stock market in Ethiopia in terms of, in efficiency or enhancing, liquidity and so on forth? And what kind of strategy should we really deploy? Thank you.
Are you going to keep? Thank you so much. I'm Hermela. I'm from the Addis Ababa University. Previously used to work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My question is going to be towards Mr. Kiprono. I wonder what has been the biggest roadblock to regional integration that you've noticed, and if there were any positive developments as of recent times, what are they? Because I feel like we've been extremely hopeless so far, particularly even with the presence of large organizations such as Ethiopian Airlines that could have facilitated a larger regional integration. We still fail miserably when it comes to intra-African trade. And so I just wanted to hear a few of those developments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have very quick 3 questions to each of the panelists. One to Eyesuswork Zafu. You identified failing to ensure the agri sector, specifically the crop subsector is one of the failures that could be attributed to the Ethiopian insurance sector. And it has been recommended now and then that it's good to make productive the agricultural sector with giving insurance backing, but what are the hindrances or the issues, sticky points that the insurance sector couldn't do as the recommendations? The second question is Mr. Kiprono, if I'm not wrong, from the NSE. I had the opportunity to take part in a training session about the development of the NSE and how that its trajectory might help our capital market formation. But the issue I learned was NSE could, despite its age, couldn't list many companies in its platform, if that statistics is right. What was really the issue, and how can we learn from that as we are embarking on establishing a capital market? The third is, there's much talk of consolidation, and I'm sure ZEMEDENEH is forefront in the talk. Is it because how the banking business has been evolving over the years in the developed market that necessitated as a recommendation to practice it in our country, or is there a strong case for consolidation? Because our market is very and at its nascent stage, and it's very much the banking sector is not well developed. Even financial inclusion is at its earliest stage. Isn't there a potential for our banks to go in their own way and see whether that consolidation is a necessity? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, is there anyone who has questions for Admassu? Yeah. For Admassu? Yeah. Okay, here. Tell us who you are first and then your question. I know who you are, but for the audience.
My name is Gizi Shaktsama. Actually, I represent now Addis Ababa University. Even though if I'm from private sector, I have some few questions from even Mr. Kiprono, but first let me ask Admassu. I know Admassu is from the private bank, so my question is, number one, is there any possibility that we can work together with Addis Ababa University to bring some funds for our students to have a knowledge transfer from any African countries? And second, actually I have very important question. Is it possible to ask Mr. Kipu? Okay, yeah, quickly. Okay, number one, my question is to Mr. Kittony. What was your first challenge when you start capital market in your country? Second, did you have any funds from any donors to have knowledge transfer to Ethiopia? I mean, to implement capital market. Number three, what was your a big challenge to apply to implement capital market in your country? For Mr. Admassu, we need really, I mean, he has to support, even though he works for another banks, but he's Ethiopian. So we need really big support from your bank. So what you have, because we are going to implement Idea Exchange Forum in Addis Ababa University, we need big funds. So is there any ways that you can support us? Thank you.
Okay, I think that will be the end of the question phase. I'm sorry. I don't set the timing, but the organizers want to wrap this up on time. So each one of you, you know the questions you were asked. If you can just very quickly. But since Admassu is far out there, we'll start with you, Admassu. If you can answer the questions that were directed to you, and then we'll let you go. Okay, Admassu, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, ZEMEDENEH, and thank you for the question. Very briefly, we have an academy within TDB Group. We also have 4 other entities within our group, an asset management company, we have a trade and development fund, we have an insurance company. But just to say that the academy does facilitate exchanges. We do some very interesting events several times throughout the year on different matters. We just did one for legal practitioners across 25 countries around how to negotiate complex commercial transactions and PPPs. We had participants from Ethiopia as well as some 20-something African countries. For the university, Addis Ababa University, I think we're open-minded. We could find a way to enable some of your maybe graduate students to plug into some of these events that we have so that they can come and get some exposure and hear how the applied side of their specific disciplines are panning out. So we would be open to extending some opportunities through that particular platform that we have. I think the financial landscape, just in closing, is not just about commercial banks. We know that there's a whole host of different types of lenders. There's microfinance institutions, there's specialized SME lenders. You have in the asset management space, all types of funds that cater to very specific segments and niches within the financial landscape. So I think we should just bear that in mind and not see everything through the lens of just the mainstream banking segment of the industry. I think there are a lot of lessons, I think, as has been asked, around how to manage the process of continued reform and strengthening of the sector. I think there are different spaces, and I don't think we should look at them all identically. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Admassu. You want to continue?
Thank you. I have 4 questions. The first one is, as Ethiopia works towards developing its own stock exchange, what are the things that we as the Nairobi Securities Exchange would ask you to look out for? The first thing that I would want to really emphasize is capital mobility. I mean, you have to really embrace the whole concept of capital mobility, even in your regulatory framework. What investors like is to be able to sell their shares, move their, there should be free movement of capital. You also need to ensure that from a regulatory standpoint, that there is a good mix between retail and institutional investors and between foreign and local investors. The best bet is if you have if you've got like in Kenya, we have a 60% foreign and 40% local investors participating in our market. One of our strategic plans now is to move it to 50-50. But we think that a 50-50 ratio would be quite good for sustainability and liquidity of the market. The other thing is I'd also ask that you look carefully at the products, especially the initial public offerings that you will be bringing to market, you need to work closely with your governments to ensure that they also embrace the idea of listing some state-owned enterprises, approaching family-owned enterprises that can also list their companies if they're of scale, governance and regulatory affairs. You need to ensure also that regulation is being done correctly and that you have a regulator who is really operating on the basis of global best practice. The role of banks, I was asked a question about the role of banks. I see the banks playing a very important role. One of these roles would be in recognizing shares and recognizing the products and services on an exchange as a new asset class. So those are a new asset class that would be collateralized and that you could also lend to the people who are investing in the market. Banks in many countries are very viable business institutions and they have a lot of inherent internal resources. So you can lead the way also in governance, in making sure that you are the example of how a well-governed enterprise should be. Especially the fact that banks are hosts of other people's funds, we in the exchange are also custodians in a way of other people's resources because the money that is trading there is not our resources. So you can be in the forefront in ensuring good governance and compliance across the board. And I would really encourage that if there are too many small banks, the time to start the consolidation conversation is now, because economies of scale, we will realize would take you further. On regional integration, I was asked a question of regional integration. Regional integration is to ensure that our economies are better integrated, that there is from a political, from a trade, and from an infrastructure standpoint, that we have a better operating environment as enterprises. And the challenge that we've had, particularly with the regional blocks, and here I talk about the regional blocks being the East African Community, being the African Union, the SADC, ECOWAS, and a whole lot of them, is that the challenge has always been walking the talk. The bureaucrats often are very, very many steps behind the politicians. When the AU mandate was signed in Kigali, I think in 2015, to date, we still have a lot of non-tariff barriers. We still have a lot of issues of harmonization of regulation and etc. So for me, I think the biggest challenge in regional integration is that we haven't walked the talk. The bureaucratic processes have not moved as fast as the political goodwill when the heads of state sit in a room in a summit and sign on to those protocols. So that's my intervention in terms of regional integration. Is there a case for consolidation? I would say yes, there is a case for consolidation of especially your banking sectors and many other sectors. I am a strong advocate that it's better to own less of a big enterprise than 100% of a very small enterprise. In fact, we as a NSC are going on a roadshow in East Africa to begin the conversation of seeing how we can integrate our markets and work together under a single window. In fact, we house the African Exchanges Single Window Initiative, which is in the NSC. And one thing that we learned from COVID is that we operated the exchange for 2 years without anybody stepping into the building. So we realized actually that we are operating a technology platform. So there's no reason why, for example, the ESX and the NSC and the Kigali Exchange and Kampala Exchange can all realize the arbitrage on one single window. So I do believe that, yes, there is a huge opportunity for integration of our capital markets. The challenges we faced, one, as we developed our NSC, one of them was, of course, at the phase when we were demutualizing. It was a very big challenge. Knowledge transfer, yes, we are committed to working with yourselves, and we have a meeting later on with the leaders of the ESX to see how we can deepen our collaboration and cooperation, and currently we do offer quite a few training services. And by the way, an exchange is beyond the listing of fixed income securities and the trading of equities. There's also the vending of data, because by virtue of the fact that you will be operating an exchange, you'll be the repository of a lot of data, and the Bloombergs of this world will be knocking on your door wanting to do business with yourselves. Liquidity is crucial. You need to ensure that your markets are liquid enough, and one way of making sure that happens is by ensuring that if foreign investors come in and buy shares in Addis, when they need their dollars out, please give them their dollars tomorrow morning, not after 3 weeks. Because if you do it after 3 weeks, I can assure you that money will go to South Africa and other places. Another challenge we faced was COVID. were able to surmount that. And finally, the challenge we faced also was with retail investors, the general population. We would want to see more of our common man in our country, the man operating a taxi, the hotel worker, buying shares and selling shares. But many of them are unsophisticated. They want to come in and make a big kill. You know, when you do an IPO, people might make a lot of money in a very short window of time. And if they don't make that money, they run away and they disappear. But we are trying to educate our people. The information asymmetry is a journey. Even though we have a few steps ahead of you, we can work together in educating our people, especially the common man, that shareholding is a new asset class apart from farms, vehicles, and houses. Thank you very much.
Ato Eyesuswork, very quickly, please.
I don't have many questions, so thank God. I'm very happy about that. Listen, it is part of the price we have to pay, because why the financial sector is moving ahead faster and better, say, in Kenya here, and not here. I mean, perhaps, I don't think I would say that, yes, we should have had the British or the French to come and manage us here. But I remember the time when I was at the University College of Addis Ababa, when starting the time when African countries were becoming independent. The emperor, first time he said 100 scholarships for boys and girls from countries becoming newly independent. And when they came, and they told us to our faces too, okay, we were so shy. We didn't know what political discourse meant, okay? And we were not outspoken at all right? So whilst we say we are very proud to have been one of the very few countries in Africa not to have been colonized, we are also paying a price for not having associated with outsiders for such a long time. One, that is one. Number two, look, the Derg was a traumatic experience for the small private sector that was just starting. All right? And proclamation which said, no private company to have more than 500,000 Ethiopian birr. No private company at all. All right? We have not learned to think big in Ethiopia. I'm sorry to say this, for the most part. When we opened up, say, for example, my own sector, the insurance sector, you know the capital requirement of the sector at the time to establish one insurance company? 3 million Ethiopian birr if you are doing general business, 7 million if you are doing both general and life. 3 million Ethiopian birr. And then you establish an insurance company, and when you went to the central bank to ask for a license, the officer there will say, well, amongst the assets that you have already procured, where is the vehicle or the car of the chief executive officer? with 3 million capital. What people did not know, I hope they have realized by now, was that if you open an insurance company with 3 million birr, and you are going to, say, insure a business establishment of 500 million birr, how much of that 500 million birr risk is that company going to retain or to cover with its own 3 million paid up capital? And it's not just one risk. They simply became funnels or tunnels for transferring resources outside by way of reinsurance premiums. Okay? Nobody would listen. They would not understand. We still have, unfortunately, this attitude of not consulting those that know or that may know a little more, because they think that asking somebody else is putting down themselves below that person, which is a very unfortunate attitude. So we have to start thinking big. We have to start consulting. If you remember, please try to remember that I spoke about consultation between supervisors and the industry players. It's a very, very important aspect of development. So it is unfortunate there is still very little knowledge in the insurance industry because we have not been training. In the university, I remember, there was just one course. I think it was risk and insurance. One course in the university. And that was all there was about insurance. And somebody who has taken that course comes out to the real world and wants to behave that he knows insurance. For heaven's sake, we are far, far behind in our knowledge of the industry and hence in our appreciation of the industry. Mergers and acquisitions. I remember what I said to His Excellency, the Minister of Finance, Ahmed Shide, once. There was a meeting in his office, and we were coming out, and I said, listen, don't ask banks, insurance companies, and give them the impression that you are forcing them to merge. I said, consult with your officers and come out with a requirement that an insurance company will have to have a minimum of 1 billion birr capital. Then these small companies will go around seeking for partnership. Look, that was what happened in Nigeria. I remember when I was there. There were so many banks, and they did not want so many banks. What they wanted was a few strong banks with resources. And they've said, you better, you do what you want to do, but from here on, we're not renewing your licenses. That's it. Why fight with each banker or with each insurance company? If you want to do the work, then you have to put the money down to cover the responsibilities that you undertake. So I think these are things that perhaps we are starting to learn because, I mean, we were afraid to be the small fish in a big pond. So we kept the Kenyans, the Kenyan industry from operating in Ethiopia for a long time. Now we have ACTA, okay? And we have promised to open each other's borders to, you know, and I hope that this will bring the change. Thank you.
You know what we need to do is one entire session of just Ato Eyesuswork, sharing his wisdom about a lot of things. I mean, it'd be unfair to, I feel really bad to have to ask him to wrap up, but one of these days, maybe the organizers of ICAP, an entire session, maybe half a day, ask him all questions, and he has fantastic answers. So let's just take it. But it's the interest of time. I know you've all been sitting here for hours and hours and hours. We need to wrap up. So you will agree with me, this is an amazing event. We learned a lot. There was one question I was asked about, you know, this consolidation. Is this more an ideological thing? Or how do we determine it? Well, let me put it. I went through and I Googled the 100 largest banks in Africa. Okay, it's an annual ranking. By the way, I'm a judge at this annual Bankers Award, so I have the data. And to put things in perspective, remember, we have the 5th largest economy in Africa, period, or the 3rd largest in sub-Saharan Africa, right? How many banks, how many Ethiopian private banks are in the top 100? Take a guess. Oh, wow, you cheated. 2. You know where they are? With all due respect, my good friend Asfa was here. His bank is one of them, okay? My other good friend Zaha is not here, but Awash, those are the only 2 banks in the top 100. Again, with all due respect to what they've been able to achieve, Awash is at number 82, and Dashin is at number 86. There's a disconnect between our economy, the size of our economy. We want to grow by double digits over the next 10 years. How is it that banks of this size can support an economy of this size? It doesn't. I mean, it's not an ideological thing. It's not. So what I suggest, merge 3 or 4 together, voluntarily, ideally. I've been told many times, I can tell you last year and a half, we gave presentations to about 15 boards of banks in Ethiopia. So we have a deeper understanding, almost 15, 14, 15. They tell me, ZEMEDENEH, you don't understand how we're all set up. They say by religion, by ethnicity, by region. I don't care. Money doesn't care. The dollar doesn't care. The birr doesn't care anymore. If you don't consolidate, right? If you don't consolidate, you won't have a correspondent bank to deal with you. They will think Citi will drop you, JP Morgan will drop you, because in the United States, the risk of compliance, the fee, a penalty you have to pay for non-compliance with some tiny little bank in Africa is not in the millions, it's in the billions. Just Google it, how many Citibank paid or JP Morgan paid for some lapse in some branch in some country they've never heard of. And for them, Africa is far, far away. So this is not an ideological thing, it's a reality. We want to grow, we want to be big, we're going to grow. I don't know how many of you have seen it. Please follow me on Twitter. I tweet a lot about economy. In fact, that's about the only thing I tweet.
I did not cheat at Mr. ZEMEDENEH. It should tell you that I read what you send
exactly.
me.
I was just joking. I know you know.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, I got the information from you.
It's an American way of saying you cheated. It's a joking way of saying you read something. But did you see the forecast of the Ethiopian economy over the next 40 years? It didn't come from me, it didn't come from the IMF, it came from Goldman Sachs. You know who Goldman Sachs is, right? Those folks sitting in New York, the world's largest investment bank, has a forecast out that says in the next 40 years, 45 years, okay, they listed the 25 largest economies in the world, not in Africa, Middle East, or emerging markets, in the world. You know what they've put Ethiopia at? Number 16. You know what our GDP is going to be? $6.2 trillion. It's American dollars, it's not Zimbabwean dollars, okay? It's real dollars. So if that's the trajectory we're on, can we afford to have tiny little banks? With all due respect, they've succeeded. They've been paying us 30, 35% dividends for a number of years, which by the way is going to be declining as we grow. So that's the reason we need consolidation. However, and I want to emphasize this, we will have specialist banks. I'm talking about 4 or 5 big, what I call money center banks, commercial banks, wholesale banks, that offers everything. And then we should have specialist banks, agricultural banks, women's banks, mortgage banks, which, by the way, we recently set up a mortgage bank. Even the regional banks, we might want to consider. So I'm not suggesting we eliminate all these other, eliminate is the wrong word. I think the media, please cut that out. But all I'm saying is specialist banks will be there, but we need very large banks. Our companies are going cross-border going forward. Where 2 or 3 Ethiopian companies right now we're working with, we're going to be investing in, that are actually considering going abroad, investing abroad. These banks have to tag along, but not with the size that they have today. So when we talk about consolidation, it's the reality we're talking about. The global economy is changing. Africa, AFCFTA is here. The Africa Continental Free Trade is here. So we need to focus on those and get there. A year from now, by the way, when we meet like this, we'll be talking about institutions, financial institutions that don't exist today. Investment banks, brokerage firms, asset custodial firms, the whole shebang, because ESX will be launched by November. I think some of you know already, Ethio Telecom will be the first company to sell shares. So a lot of changes. Take that into consideration when we talk. Let's not forget the past, the baggage, what we have about the sector, and think forward. And I think we'll be very strong big banks dominating in Africa, including our good friends who can collaborate with the Kenyans, down south with South Africans and the Nigerians. I mean, even in our continent, there are sizable banks and institutions which are part of it. So it's not an ideological thing, it's a practical thing. We need to get this thing done ASAP. So in summary, fantastic event. Thank you to the organizers. Professor Admassu, thank you for this. You've been very persistent. Thank you for inviting me to shoot my mouth off. But anyways, all of you, thank you for being here. And a round of applause for our panelists, and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Ato ZEMEDENEH, thank you very much.
Can we create a future for East Africa's finance sector?